So as promised, I am making a quick video to finish out our lecture for Chapter 3. I haven't decided for sure yet, but I'm probably going to maybe move towards doing video lectures and break them up by topic for every chapter, and just do the entire chapter. And then most likely I'll release those Tuesday morning before class at some point. So we're gonna try and I want to gauge the class's response and see what everybody would prefer. But I think that's going to be a little bit better for everyone. But let's go ahead and get started with this. We're going to go ahead and click through this till we get to our topic. We went through all this in class. So we talked about the physical topologies during our regular class period, and we ended on slide 25, logical logical topologies. So I'm going to make this video just covering logical topologies, and then we're going to move I'll stop the video and then I will do a second video related to the next topic, which, if I go back real quick and look at the objectives, let's see. The objectives, of course, are describe primary physical networking topologies in common use. We've already talked about that. This is going to be the primary logical networking topologies in common use. So this video will be about 5 to 10 minutes, relatively short. And then describe major LAN networking topologies. That'll be another video. And compare Wi-Fi standards will be the last video. So let's go ahead and get back to slide 25. So logical topologies are going to be primarily affected by, if we actually go back to this slide, in logical topologies, the sort of definitive description is, this is the description of how data travels from one computer to another, where the physical topology defines the how the wiring and everything comes together in a physical network layout. The logical topology just defines how data gets from point A to point B. So in many cases, when you're talking about a physical bus or a physical ring, the logical topology will actually mimic that. So when you talk about a physical bus, you will also have a logical bus. But when you're talking about, and likewise, when you're talking about a physical ring topology, you'll also have a logical ring. So the way data is transferred is mimicked by the physical arrangement of cables. But for physical star topology, that's where the logical topology changes slightly. So the central electronics, or the electronics of the central device, actually determines the topology. And so we're going to look at that real quick here. So if you look here, we have a hub as our central device. And the hub, if you look at the wiring of the hub, you'll see that it's similar to a physical bus internally. So this would be your bus right here, and each port on your hub would be a connection into a logical bus. So this is a physical star because we have a central device, but it is a logical bus. So when you have a hub as your central device, that makes your logical topology a logical bus. Okay, so when data gets transmitted, we're going to sort of follow this. I want to do a drawing, as I'm quite fond of. So I'll draw my hub. Of course, we're going to draw it out like this. Each device connected up to it would be another connection up to the daisy chain. And you notice that in the drawing on the computer, there's actually so you've got devices that connect out. Okay. So here we have our hub, Okay, and I've drawn a line, right? That's our bus, and on the end there's those dots. Those would be internal wiring, and of course this isn't actually what the electronics look like. It's going to be done with circuitry, but each device connected in would actually be like a device connected into, sorry, it's kind of hard, I'm trying to do this backwards, but each device connected up would be connected into this into each port on the hub would be as though it was another one in the daisy chain in a physical bus. So if we look at a physical bus, what we have is a line, and you have PCs along that line connected in. Right? So, and then at the end of our line we run terminators. Okay? That sort of makes sense. There we've got our bus is just our line, okay, and then we've got terminators on the end. So the way data gets propagated in a logical bus is the same way it gets propagated in a physical bus. Whenever you transmit something onto the medium, it's going to be seen by all devices. So if you look over here on our slide, you see data coming from this device gets sent into your logical bus here, and anybody that's connected to that bus is going to see the signal. And that's where you get that whole thing that we talked about, where we mentioned how a hub forwards signal to all connected devices. So it will receive a signal through one interface and forward it out all connected interfaces. Okay. There's our drawing. Okay. So in that way, it's a logical bus. The logic of it works the same way as a physical bus, or like a daisy chain. Okay, and so that's, you can kind of see the evolution of networking from sort of the physical bus, where you actually had a physical daisy chain where computers were connected to device, to the repeater method, where it was just, it was just an extension of your physical bus. That's how a repeater functioned, right? And then finally the hub, where they said, okay, let's centralize this into a more convenient method of connecting everybody together, but we're gonna sort of centralize it into a central location so that we don't have to run our daisy chain anymore, and we alleviate a lot of those limitations. So there's sort of been a progression, but we're going to quickly jump over that because I think this is more important. Logical switched, or switched topology. So when we get to logical switched, we actually have, if you look at our slide here, you can see that when no data is being transmitted, there are no connections. This is known as dynamic connections. It creates dynamic connections, and so the connection only exists when data is being transferred. So in this case, we have PC1, it's transferring data to PC6, and you notice this connection is not here when no packets are being transmitted, but it creates the connection as transmission occurs. So that's how a switch sort of works. And so we know that a switch receives a frame, and it looks at its destination MAC address and determines how to forward it. That's how it creates that dynamic connection. Okay, so there is no logical circuit or any circuit whatsoever while there is no data being transmitted. But it creates a dynamic connection or a dynamic circuit when data transfer is occurring. Okay, so let's go back real quick and talk about logical ring. So the central device in this case, we mentioned briefly an MAU. It stands for multi-station access unit. Couldn't remember that the other night. But MAU, if you sort of, I'll draw it here because I want to sort of represent this so that you can see it. But you see the ports there. There's 5 devices on it. Okay, and the connections come into sort of an internal, almost like the FDDI switch, something similar to that, but there's 2 links. You see, notice there's 2 lines between each device, right? And then ultimately 2 lines that lead back to the other devices. Okay, oops, kind of drew it funky. But data in a ring can only travel. Oh my gosh, this is so hard. Trying to look at it on the screen. Let me actually just show you over on the slide. So if we have one of the PCs here, let's just say this is PC1, and let's assume this is a token ring environment. So token ring is how it's actually transferring data. So token ring involves a system called token passing. We're going to not really delve into that too much because it's obsolete. But token ring, this guy's got the token and he is ready to transmit. So he sends his signal. Signal can only travel in one direction. So let's assume for a minute that the outside line here, this far one closest to my mouse pointer, this is the line that is the line coming in. So it's going to come in and get to here, right? And then this is going to forward it over to here and up. This computer is going to see it. This is going to say no, not for me, and pass it back and up, back and up. So let's assume this guy's trying to transmit something to here. So he sends it all the way through the system, and each device along the path is going to see it and reject it and say not for me. Finally, this device is going to get it and say, great, that's for me. So token ring, you can see why that would be a little bit less than convenient. It's got to go through each device in order to get to its destination, because data can only travel in one direction in token ring, okay, or in just a logical ring in general. Okay, so don't worry too much about this stuff. You need to be aware of the fact that there is a logical ring, and you would use an MAU and token ring technology, though token ring is completely obsolete, even more so than logical buses, because even still logical buses are still occasionally in place. So, okay, and in fact they're quite commonly in place, and we'll discuss how in just a minute. I don't have it on these slides, but I do think it bears mentioning that if you have as your central device, if you have an access point, so there's your access point, and you have devices connected into that. This is just, let's say, a laptop, or a couple of laptops. Let's just make a quick little star network with a wireless access point as the central device. So we've got a nice little star topology network. Our central device is a wireless access point. So I'm not sure, I can't remember if there was a question about this in the last chapter, but in fact, yes, I do. There is a question about this, and it is mentioned in the last chapter, but a wireless access point functions not quite like a switch, but more like a hub. So when data is transferred, it's transmitted in all directions. So even if it's got a wired component, if one of these devices is attempting to send data, okay, this device here is attempting to send data, and let's say he's attempting to send data to the circled device here, over here, okay? That's where he's attempting to send data. The access point is going to receive the data, okay, and it's going to forward it out. It's going to broadcast it out because it's sending just a wireless transmission. The thing about a wireless transmission is everybody who's connected to that wireless network is going to see that transmission, and in fact, everybody who's not connected is also going to see it. It will be encrypted in most instances, but now everybody's going to reject it and say, not for me, not for me, not for me. Everybody's going to say, not for me, except this device. Now, one more thing that an access point also does is if it receives a wireless transmission, regardless of its destination, it's not just going to send it out wirelessly. It's not just going to retransmit it wirelessly. It's also going to send the signal onto the hardwired component. So this is the hardwired component that goes into a wired network. Part of this, let's just assume this is part of an extended star, because most of the time wireless access points are a part of an extended star, and so it's going to not only receive the transmission from the sending device here, it's also going to forward it as a wireless broadcast essentially, and it's also going to forward it through the hardwired component of that wireless access point as well. So wireless access points function most like a hub, So when you think of a wireless access point, it's actually functioning like a logical bus. Okay, so you have to sort of wrap your head around that. It's really hard, I think, to wrap your mind around that overall, because there are no wires, but you have to think about the wireless connections between devices almost like there is a wire there, just for the sake of understanding. But I think that bears mentioning. So here's sort of a chart. I would review this just to really get a good grip on it. But you see that logical topology, you see bus here for your logical topology. Physical topologies, there's a couple, bus or star. In the case of Ethernet, which we're gonna look at network technologies in a minute, and wireless LANs would be star, okay, but it's also bus, logical physical star, logical bus. So this is the most common one that's still in place today in even modern networks. Okay, ring, basically obsolete. Even FDDI is being replaced more and more. So this is sort of obsolete technology, but occasionally you will have a ring topology, particularly in the case of FDDI. Token ring is completely gone. And then you have logical switched, and that would always be a physical star. Okay? All right, so of course you guys can't answer these, so I'm just going to flash them up on the screen for half a second. You guys can feel free to pause and figure out the answers to those. Those will be questions from the quiz. Okay. That's it for this video. I guess it was more than 5 minutes. It was about 16 minutes, but I'm going to stop it here, and I'll do network technologies in the next one. Thank you.